We're sort of about to start the evening session now of the Marine Surveying International Fest. We've been on the go now for, gosh, I don't know how many hours. It's been a great time. We're now moving into the evening session, and we're going now for our first visit to Australia, the first of a couple of visits to Australia. Mick Uberti, lovely to see you online. Very, very appreciative of you for putting this presentation together. And I know you're going to talk about, as it says on the screen, how the ISM code came about and how it works from ISM code to domestic commercial vessels. Mick, the next 45 minutes are yours. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks very much, Mike. Thanks for having me, and thanks to the participants for joining in on the presentation there. So again, my name's Mick, marine surveyor. I formed Ocean Time Marine in 2008, and that's where we provided software for commercial vessel operators and marine surveyors alike to develop their own safety management system, mostly for domestic commercial vessels, but also in accordance with the ISM code. Now Ocean Time Marine has been partnered with Maritime Survey Australia. Okay, so I'm going to start here. So now I understand I'm preaching to a lot of the people who probably have even a greater understanding of this than I do, so I'm more than happy to be corrected on certain things, or if you wanted to save your questions till the end, and happy to go through them with you. So what I'm going to just chat about is how the ISM came about, and historically, prior to the world of ISM, you had very different operations and all different sort of frameworks, but never one system that made everyone conform. And as we know, like with every one single incident, there was always this always led to some sort of legislation to bring about safety on our commercial fleet in our global commercial fleet. So, for example, we had the Load Line Convention, which was brought about by Samuel Plimsoll because of to bring about a capacity for the ship, and so in turn we had Load Line. The Titanic incident brought about SOLAS, and coupled with many other incidents, the Torrey Canyon was the beginning of us bringing in about MARPOL. However, the safety management system didn't really have that single incident, and usually the oil and gas industry developed a permit to work system, and that's really all we had. However, this was all to change when we had the Herald of Free Enterprise incident in 1987, which was that large single incident that I guess in many respects they were waiting for. So again, I understand a lot of you guys would have known of this, so I'll just go ahead and play the little video and I'll talk over it at the same time of how that came about. So this was an incident from a vessel a ro-ro vessel going from Belgium to the United Kingdom, and it was found that there was complacencies at all levels of management, from I guess from the bosun up all the way up to the top level of management. We had an incident where the communication lines were somewhat blurred, where a bosun was supposed to shut the bow door, and in turn the second officer was supposed to make sure he had done that, and so on and so forth up the chain of command to the skipper on this day in 1987. this didn't happen, and it was a fatal mistake. There were 187 passengers and crew. As you'll see here, they still no single person was held accountable for this. You'll notice in the time that it took for the vessel to capsize. You saw that it was the time of departure was 1806 and 1827. The free surface effect, and off we go. Presentation. Sorry about that. So, yeah, 193 passengers, it was 187 plus crew, and as discussed there, and that was the biggest incident since the Titanic. So then we had
massive or gigantic passenger line, the world's biggest.
Okay, so they concluded that that poor workplace communications led to that incident, and so the shore-based managers were the root cause of the sinking, and a disease of sloppiness and negligence at every level of the corporation hierarchy. So this led to the development of the ISM code. Now, the IMO had an attempt to make this international law, but it would take until the Estonia incident in 1994 to confirm that. That was a vessel would go from Tallinn to Stockholm, carrying 989 people, and of which 186, only 137 survived. And again, similar circumstances. This was a circumstance where the bow door actually fell off, it was hinged, and no one really knew. You had engineers moving ballast around, and it brought about the changes in life raft design as well, and also ultimately the ISM code. So in 1998, the ISM code became mandatory. And so what this all means for us is that when you are surveying domestic commercial vessels, you can see where those single incidents of communication, designated persons and things like this, maintenance of the vessel, are all form a watered down version of all various different countries' safety management systems. So, for example, in Australia, I know we have the Marine on 504, and I've listed the other countries on the presentation there, and they have either like a certificate of compliance, certificate of safety, but these are all like watered down versions of the ISM code. So the objectives of the ISM code, to ensure safety and prevent human injury, loss of life. You want to avoid damage to the marine environment as well. And one of the good things about the ISM code is that most countries, because they've formed their own system based on the ISM code, they will accept Part A, the 12 elements of the ISM code. So the objectives of the ISM code, and we'll go through them in a second, are achieved by providing safe work practices, a safe working environment, establishing safeguards against the risks, and continually improving safety management skills. So these these objectives can be put into the categories of procedures, risk assessment, and training. Yeah. So I put in a nice statement there. So minimise the scope for poor decisions which contribute directly or indirectly to a casualty or a pollution incident. In the safety management system, the company always refers to any organisation or person who's assumed a responsibility of the operation of the vessel. So the company must develop, implement and maintain the SMS based on the following. So compliance with the mandatory rules. Each country, so for example, in Australia with that Marine on 504, we have our own rules. And in the UK with the MGN as well, equally. You want to also create procedures to ensure the safe operation of the vessel as well. You can define the levels of authority. You can do that in the company section as well, and you really need a clear communication channels between so from the deckhand all the way to the upper levels of management. So developing a safety environmental policy, which describes how the code will be achieved to ensure the safety is sea. And in some of the smaller safety management systems, this can be as simple like one paragraph around an environmental policy. Responsibility and authority. This is I guess the person who is responsible for the operation of the vessel, not necessarily the owner. Designated person in our systems in Australia, unlike the ISM code, it's not very well defined of what the designated person should be. However, in within the ISM code, it is very clear, and that person is the conduit between the vessel and the company. You have to also define the master's responsibility and authority. So you want to put in basically what their position is and what they're qualified to do. Ensure that they are conversant with the company SMS and that they're able to support the crew as well with that. One of the master's responsibilities is that they are able to make their own decisions depending on the situation. So, for example, if there is an incident or accident, they're able to act upon that without and give their best advice how to counteract that. Because they don't want to be in a position where they're compromised by the owner's motivations. Okay, now, resources and personnel. So this is really talking around crewing and how people are qualified. So I've put in there STCW 95 should be considered a minimum. So every country has their different crewing assessments and things. I think ultimately, are they given proper familiarisation with their duties? Are they under rules? Have they received training in support of the SMS? Do they understand it? And are they able to communicate in the execution of their duties? When you're establishing plans for the vessel operations, I guess things like checklists and instructions for the key shipboard operations, but you should also have them categorised into two areas: so special vessel operations and critical vessel operations. Yeah, and assign them to who they're for. So emergency preparedness. This is where you talk about the drills and establishing drills and how often they should be done, and include the statutory required ones, such as fire, flooding, ground inclusion, etc. In reporting, so you'll have your own reporting of any corrective actions. However, you should also have in there, put down the bottom, insert a line that states the latest incident report can be obtained from the authority's website. If any of your regulators are like ours, they change the reporting window and how it's done so often that you really can only ever get the latest form from the website on how to report an incident. In regards to maintenance, you don't necessarily have to have your whole maintenance schedule in your SMS. You really just want to be referring to what you do. And you want to be saying, you know, what levels of inspection are required, how you report any non-conformities or things that aren't working, do you tag out, things like that, and where you record all these activities as well. You would also, when you're looking at the SMS, make sure they've identified like critical equipment and how there is a redundancy for that. Yeah. Documents. So one thing we all find as surveyors is that there's so many obsolete documents and documents that aren't relevant in their survey record book or on the bridge. Never tell them to throw them out. I'll just say, look, archive these because they might be valuable in the future, but certainly try not to keep them in the wheelhouse on the bridge. Only keep what's valid in there. Every 12 months or you should be doing a review. This is a good opportunity for marine surveyors to get involved in their review. Having an annual audit is also a good idea, and they should do these internally as well. Generally at the time of survey though, this is when I find that most people start asking you questions about this sort of thing. We have a 5-year certificate in Australia for these. The ISM or the SMC and DOC is generally 5 years with a 3-month temporary one at the beginning. Countries like the United States and New Zealand, they have even up to 10-year issues. So put down the following points that really we should be following when doing, when completing an overview or assessing an SMS. I think you use the principles of professionalism, be objective, be independent, and equally understand your obligations as a surveyor, because it's definitely not your SMS. So you can certainly make suggestions based on your experience and knowledge, but it's not something that you want to. It's not something that you're certainly signing off on. You are really just understanding it and giving them some advice or making observations. Sorry. So in conclusion, I would say that the ISM code has stood the test of time and is a robust and effective tool. The ISM has certainly made vessel operations more accountable and safer. We've redefined areas of responsibility. There's only been a few changes. Despite this, many countries are reluctant to use ISM, in some cases hostile. But now I think most countries have embraced it. Many vessel operators, though, still debate the effectiveness of an SMS. What I would say about the safety management systems on commercial vessels is that many, that when you're assisting anyone with writing one, if the country of origin's rules allow you to use the ISM code, you use the ISM code because it very rarely changes. Since its inception, there's only been a few changes to it, whereas every country that has gone out on the limb and developed their own SMS when a watered down version of the ISM code, they continually play around with it, which makes compliance a lot harder. So yeah, thanks for that. I'm sure you guys have some questions, and I'm more than happy to answer it either here or if we've got time. And equally, you can email me, Maritime Survey Australia.
Mick, thank you very much indeed. if anyone does have questions, we've certainly got plenty of time actually. So anybody want to pick up a few questions with Mick on SMS, Safety Management System?
It's a massive benefit when she gets pregnant. You've written those comments?
I do on a personal nature. I sent her an apology the very first thing in the morning. I didn't mean any personal harm to her. But
Okay. Anyone got any questions? Just
great salary.
Just to thank you, Mick.
Yep.
Much appreciated. So
Thanks,
I
everyone.
think you've hit the mark, Mick. So I think if there's no questions, then I'm going to draw this to an end. If you could stop recording, please.